Hello, everyone. Welcome back. As promised, this is part of our Shiro Liberation, Southeast Asian Shiro Liberation stream, live, Zoom. Welcome back. This week, we have some gender justice advocates and warriors who will be talking to you all. But I wanted to come on and invite you to follow us on Freedom Inc. and all these other organizations and folks who will be speaking tonight, but really to relay what they're going to talk about to the podcast or the Zoom that we did last week. And I wanted to share with you all a little bit about the Southeast Asian Liberation Shiro project. Basically, I think growing up, we didn't have, as a Southeast Asian girl and teen, I didn't really have too many Southeast Asian leaders to look up to, especially Shiros. And so one of the things that I made a promise to myself was that, if we couldn't find Shiros that looked like us, then we can create Shiros that look like us. And this week, I'm really excited for you all to hear some Shiros who are doing some amazing work in the gender justice field. They've been doing this work for a long time. And as part of the Shiro project, we are also, I think they'll link it up, but we're also creating T-shirts for people to wear and to also learn about who is on the face of these T-shirts. This is going to be the first this year. We're going to be the first. We're featuring 4 different Shiros, but this conversation today is specifically around domestic violence and sexual assault and gender-based violence. And these are our everyday Shiros. And so I'm really excited to invite you to this conversation. In addition to that, order some of the T-shirts, learn about our last week's Shiros that we featured. And that link will be streaming later on. And help us order. And every order of T-shirt goes to programming and goes to women and girls programming. And so welcome to this conversation. I'd like to introduce you to tonight's facilitator, Pa Tao. She is the executive director of the Black and Brown Wisconsin Women's Coalition organization. It is a statewide organization that works with Black and Brown women who are in the gender justice field. And so we provide, Black and Brown Women's Coalition provides training and provides a lot of resources around gender-based violence issues throughout the state of Wisconsin. So Pa Tao, I'd like to introduce you. I think you're on mute, Pa.
Sorry about that. Yes, thank you, Kajua, for that wonderful introduction. You're amazing, and I continue to be humbled by you and inspired by the incredible work that you are doing in our community. Many of you may not know, but Kajua is also a co-founder and a board member of the Black and Brown Women Power Coalition. So you're looking at one of the, trailblazer in our community who is helping create all sorts of movements and all sorts of programs for Hmong women and girls, not here just in Wisconsin, but also statewide and, internationally. So thank you. A little bit about the Black and Brown Women Power Coalition. Our mission is to build the capacities of Black and Brown advocates in their communities to end violence against women, queer, trans folks, and young people. And we do this by providing technical assistance to Hmong programs in Wisconsin, as well as specific trainings, and providing professional developments to advocates that we work with. We also administer the Power Up Eau Claire project, which is a local civic engagement project that's local to me here in Eau Claire. But we also manage and lead the Hmong Family Strengthening Helpline. And that's a program that's really near and dear to my heart. The Hmong Family Strengthening Helpline has been in existence for 17 years. Through the helpline, we provide peer counseling, information, and referrals, and support to anyone that is experiencing violence, right? We also provide services to providers and to advocates as well. So they can call the helpline if they are working with the client or with the victim and they need the resources that we can provide. But the really neat thing about the helpline is that it provides a home for Hmong and Southeast Asian advocates. And it's one of the drivers of the Wisconsin movement to end gender-based violence in our community, right? Especially the Hmong and the Khmer community here in Wisconsin. So I am so humbled to be in this space with some of the Trailblazer and our movement to end gender-based violence. Some of the amazing women-led leaders are really driving the work that we're doing in Wisconsin. And tonight, I'd like to introduce to you Tammy Zhang. She is an amazing mom, an amazing Hmong woman leader from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She is also a partner, or her agency rather, is also a partner of the Hmong Family Strengthening Helpline. And so I'm just really honored to be in this space with her. Tammy currently serves as the executive director of the Hmong American Women Association, as a grassroots gender justice organization that's led by Southeast Asian women and Korean women. Hawa has served Milwaukee for over 25 years and currently works to end gender injustice for all Southeast Asian women and girls, Korean trans folks, Milwaukee, and around the world too, through advocacy and community organizing. Tammy is a direct reflection of over 25 years of investments from Hawa. Her mother is one of the Hawa's founder, and she is unapologetically Hmong woman leader that's committed to building a better world and a world free of violence. She also serves in various capacity roles, which include as a council member for the Wisconsin Governor's Council Domestic Violence, as a commissioner for the city of Milwaukee, Commission for Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, and she is also a board member of the Black and Brown Women Power Coalition, and also a core leader of the Vinyao Hmong Women's Gaming Circle. Tammy is deeply passionate about building and investing in social justice warriors that will use their gift to impact the world and end violence against women, girls, queer, and trans people. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Science, creative writing from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and a Master of Science and Administrative Leadership with an emphasis in adult education at the University of Milwaukee. So please help me welcome Tammy to be part of our conversation today. Next is Sambo Trom. And Sambo Trom is Sambo, or Sam, is the Khmer Gender Justice Director of Freedom Inc. She's a longtime resident of Madison and a mother of two beautiful children. Being a genocide survivor of the Lao Pa region, she knows the importance of serving the community and empowering victims and survivors of violence. Her passion for social justice has led her to become the Khmer Gender Justice organizer and community power builder, coordinator of Freedom Inc. There, she provides culturally and linguistically specific direct services, creating safe community space and leadership development for over 50 women and elders throughout the state of Wisconsin. The result of her work has been the 40 Khmer people around Dane County, Wisconsin, that were able to get their citizenship and to register to vote in the last 3 years. Outside of her organizing work, she loves to spend time with her family and friends and travel the world and build relationships. So welcome, Sambo, to the space today, and thank you so much for joining us. And then we have also help me welcome Say Yang. She is the Queer Justice Director from Minnesota with Transforming Generation. Say is a queer woman who is passionate about LGBTQ liberation, social justice, ending gender-based violence, and healing. Say has been working with victim survivors and organizing in the LGBTQ community for over 10 years and has spent the last 5 years providing therapy services in various capacities. She currently serves as the Queer Justice Director of Transforming Generation and is a clinical social worker by trade. So welcome, Say, and thank you for being here with us tonight. Lastly, we have Jamie Claire. She is a descendant of immigrants and matriarchs, a lover of humanity, and a believer in healing. They are from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where they currently work as a youth organizer with Vet Lead. They hope to bring liberation to the Chinese Vietnamese ancestors by organizing Southeast Asian and BIPOC working class communities towards self-determination and collective power in Philadelphia and beyond. They are also a songwriter, singer who writes music, striving to evoke the humanness within us all and to claim space in this world that we're in. So please help me welcome our panelists today. And I'm so excited to be here in the space with them and to have this conversation with them to learn more about the gender justice work that they are doing in their own community. So for tonight's conversation, we're going to start off with a quick icebreaker. So please answer, in any way that you feel comfortable, right? Just to kind of get us talking about who we are and why we're doing the work. So if I can start with Tammy, can you share with us who is your Shiro?
Yeah, thank you, Fa. For everybody, Fa is a really awesome person too, and she's leading a lot of amazing work in Wisconsin too. So thanks, Fa, for moderating tonight. As mentioned in my bio, I really have to uplift my mother as one of my Shiros. I would not be here without her. And when I say that I am a reflection of over 25 years of investment from the same organization that my mother founded, it's very, very true. I feel like I would not be who I am without the Hmong American Women's Association and without the leadership and vision of my mom, right? And one thing that's really important to know about me is I really feel like I am a direct reflection of my mother. My mother is, someone who is very kind, very, very kind, and is a really, really great listener. And she's also really, really smart. And, she came over to the States, when she was in middle school, and so she had a little bit of time to, be here in the States. But, she also got married really young. She got married when she was about 14 and had her first child when she was 15. And so I knew that may have been her story, but that when she really had all of her children, especially her daughters, she really wanted something different for us, right? And I think the reason, and one of the memories that really reminds me of my mother and the strength that she has and that she has taught us, is even though my mother is a very kind woman, she also has really taught me how to be strong and fierce in a lot of ways. And she kind of did it in her own way, right? And I remember this story when, when there was an older man, he probably was 30 or so. And at that time, me and my sisters were, my oldest sister was probably 14. And I was 12. And then, I had a younger sister who was about 10 at the time. There's an older gentleman who was probably in his 30s that came to our house, came to the porch, and he came holding a teddy bear and some candy, right? And he came in, and my mom opened the door and was like, "What the hell? I don't know who you are," right? And he said that he had gotten my sister's information from the Hmong New Year and that he wanted to talk to my older sister, right? And knowing my mom, very kind, very like, just like a very quiet lady, like completely shifted in her power and was like, I don't know whose door you're knocking on, but my daughter is only 14 years old. So what the hell are you doing here? You are not coming in this house. You're not talking to my daughter, right? And that was the first time that I heard like the sternness in my mother's voice, and like how she physically put her body in the doorway to be like, hell no, you are not coming into this house, and you are not like talking to any of my daughters. And at that time, we didn't really have our mothers back because, me and my sisters, we went to go hide, but we could be here, but we were hearing all of this stuff, right? And I think, that is just like the spirit of my mother is just like when it really comes down to like really protect those that you love, right? And to really stand for something, like gloves off, that's my mom, right? And I feel like I'm very much a reflection of that too. And so that's why I feel like my mother is definitely my hero and my shiro. So thanks, Pa, for that question.
Thank you, Tammy, for sharing that. That's so inspiring to hear, how your mom really, protected you, right? And I that, often takes me back to the women and girls we work with who has experienced that, right? When, little tayo chena, and how uncomfortable that is for some of us, right? When in the Hmong, culture, you have the boyfriend, just the male friend that comes to like talk to you in the house, right? And that's something that happens in the household. But it's really nice to see how your mom was very protective of you from that young age. So thank you. Say, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I could go next. Here, Pa's like, here's an icebreaker, but I'm like heating up over here because I can't think of who. you know, I think I've just met a lot of amazing women in my life, and so it's so hard to pick one and to be like, this is the share of my life. Like, there's women in my life who I've met, and some that I've never met, but I've just like learned so much from them. But of course, I'm gonna be like Tammy and be like, my mom was my Cheryl, she was truly my Cheryl, and my mom, some of you know, she died in October. And it was hard for me because we had such a close relationship. And actually that wasn't always true for us. It's taken such a long time to get us to this point. And she was starting to become curious about my queer identity and just like learning about a different way of being in relationship. And so it's different. And my mom, she was an orphan at a really young age, and so she really craved that mother's love, and so she gave that to us. And I just learned so much, from my mom about unconditional love. My mom is a funny person. Like, you would never guess it, but she's hilarious. And so I think I got some of that from her, that I just am so appreciative of, and I love that my mom was so humble. She was intelligent. She knew how to do things, but she never flaunted. She was very humble about it, very classy about it. And I think the last piece that I'll say about my mom is that we didn't know a lot about all of the things she did until she died. And she, after she died, my aunt from my mom's side reached out and was telling me all the ways that my mom had actually saved them. And I was like, what? It's like, when you got those artists that like you know, they become famous after they die. You know, that was kind of like my mom. It was like, dang, she like did all these really cool things. And you know, my mom, I don't talk a lot about her family, her side of the family, but most of her siblings are deaf and hard of hearing. And my aunt was telling me that they had to escape the war, and my mom, you know, they ran into each other by accident in the jungle, and my mom actually took care of them and got them across the border, you know. And I couldn't imagine that, you know, how they made it, how to even communicate, you know, like just all of that. And so to hear that was like, wow, my mom was just a bomb ass mom. Like she was so cool. And it was like, my mom was like probably the feminist of her generation, you know, even though she was still a person of service, and still really honored my dad. But I think she just had a different way of being. And my mom loved, she was like so fashionable, like in a way where you're like, what is she even wearing? Because like all the patterns would clash, you know, but it was so uniquely my mom. And I was just like, gosh, I just love that about my mom. She just, everywhere she went, she built community. She had friends. Okay, she has more friends than me. Okay, people calling up her phone. I'm like, oh my god. So my mom was legit the coolest person. I like my Cheryl, basically. Anyway, that's my answer.
Thank you for sharing those special memories of your mom with us today. Really appreciate hearing them. Sambo and Jamie Claire, one of you like to go next?
I can go because I'm already nervous. So I'm like, the longer I sit to wait for this answer. No, and if you asked me this question even like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it wouldn't be the same answer. And just like Say and Tammy, you know, my Shiro is my mom. And I really didn't see that in her until she passed away also last year. And so I've been learning the reasons that she does the things she does. You know, I'm always like, you're so bossy. Like, oh, why do you do the things you do and say this stuff to us? And it's until like I started learning my own history, because, you know, during the genocide, a lot of our cultures and arts and our history was wiped out, that we didn't know much about who we were and where we came from. Just that, you know, we came from Cambodia. But so just knowing like the struggle that my mom went through, I just came to realize like, I don't know if I would have been able to do it, you know. And a lot of folks who know my mom in the community now will tell you that my mom is feisty. If she has to tell you something and it's out in public, it doesn't matter. Like the temple is like a place where all my folks go, right? If there's a ceremony there and she has beef with you and she doesn't think you're doing something right, she will call you out. And it's just like this big show for everybody to see. So my mom is very forward, you know, she taught me strength. She's given me, you know, some tips of how to survive. But she always told me that, you know, we continue to fight because we only fail when we actually stop fighting. So even if we fall and we continue to fight, we're actually still winning. And so I carry that on with me, and I do regret a lot of the things that I've learned, but the stories that I've heard of her, of how she had to degrade herself to make sure that she is able to provide for my sisters. As a woman, as a Khmer woman, it was really hard. And then I really actually understood like why she is who she is and why she says the things to me. And I really took that in. I'm sad that it took this long. But with that, I continue to hear her words, and so that I can continue to empower the elders that I have in my community.
Thank you so much, Sambo, for sharing that. And I really love that, you know, the quote that you shared. And I think that's something that is so true in the work that we're doing, right? That if we're feeling, even if you feel like we're feeling, we're still doing it. So to keep going and do the work that we keep doing. Jim and Claire, what about you?
I want to say I love all the love that our moms are getting today, and I feel like it's so awesome to hear that our Shiros are not just people that we read about or that we hear about, but it's people who we see and we interacted with and that raised us and birthed us, you know. And it's also really beautiful to see. It's pretty obvious in your description of your moms that y'all carry pieces of the previous generation in you now, and that you're all on this panel as Shiros yourselves. I feel like I hope that your moms are watching you, and whether that's here on Earth or from somewhere else, and I hope that they're super proud of you. But yeah, I think I also have had a hard time answering this question because I've been really lucky to be surrounded by so many Shiros, like so many incredible women who take charge of their lives and work to foster healing within themselves and in their communities and in their families. I think one person that I don't know personally, but that I learned about this summer that really became sort of an image of I guess like womanist and feminist work is Elaine Brown. She is an activist, and she was the first woman chair of the Black Panther Party. And I think when I first learned about her, I was like, whoa, why did I never hear about her before? Why have we never talked about her before? And I think that interaction or that response that I had towards learning about her, I realized is a very common response when we learn about people, particularly women in movement work. And it's too often a response. There's so much labor and work and love that's carried by women, not just women, but gender oppressed folks and queer folks, gender nonconforming folks. But I think their labor and their love is not recognized. And I think that is a form of erasure and violence. And I want to remember Elaine Brown. I want to remember people who aren't remembered, especially because she has done so much. I think like I really resonated with her because she used things that are a lot of times categorized as like feminine, right? Care, community care. She started the Black Panthers breakfast program. And that's like, oh, you're just feeding breakfast to kids. That's not real movement work, right? Real movement work is the what you see like as, you know, in policy or like more I guess like interpersonal conflict or things like that. But she uses music, she uses care, she uses community care, and these things were so transformative for our society. And I think that I want to uplift that and remember that always. And I think I want to remember that she wasn't, it wasn't that she was just ignored or erased in history, but she was also like violently pushed out, that even within, I guess, the fight for Black liberation, she experienced violence of heteropatriarchy and sexism. And I want to remember that even within this movement work that we're doing, there's so much complexity. How do we constantly remember the intersections of people and I guess like work with nuance, right? It's not easy solutions. It's not black and white solutions. The problem, the situation is complex. And so our response to it has to be complex. And I am really excited by it. I'm excited to see that we have done it and we can do it and then we can continue doing it. So I'm really excited to be here on this panel with you all and meeting you all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie Claire, for sharing who your Sheroes is. I think it's, like you said, so important to remember folks who has paved the way for us to be here, right? So thank you for sharing. That leads me to my next question for for all of you, as we dive deeper into talking about the work that we're doing, right? My next question is, and you can answer them in whatever order or whoever feels comfortable. What made you decide to come into this work, in the first place? So anyone can go.
For me, it was because I've already lived in the community, so I already saw the struggle that was going on. And no matter, what the changes were that we were trying to fight for, we weren't being heard, because we weren't looked at as important. And so it was, my passion for the community, too, that made me do this work. And I didn't like the work that I do at Freedom Inc. Like, I'm new to Freedom Inc., but the work that I do has always been something that I've done, all my life. I've had elders, come knocking at my door and asking, like, can you help me with this? So I started to see that there was no place for them to go to. Someone who looks like them, someone who speaks the language. And so being in a land that's not your own, and not being able to call home, and also struggling with the resources, is the reason why I decided, I want to do something for my community. Like, we deserve to live better. Not just that we're here and we get to accept that, okay, we're not at war, but to actually also let them understand, just being here is not enough. You should be able, to live a life without stress and worry, to go see doctors, and when you're in pain, to have somebody hear you out or advocate for you. So that was one of the reasons why I, joined Freedom Inc., is that work was so important to my community, but also not even just the Khmer community, but the other Black and Brown communities who are mostly impacted by the way the system is, but not seen as important, but is invisible, but are walking every day struggling. So yeah, for me, it's the people. And when I think about the people who are going through this stuff, I actually go back to thinking about my family, thinking about my mom, and also thinking, about the struggle that my folks have been going through. So yeah, that's the reason why I do this work.
Thank you, Sambo, for sharing that with us.
I would love to tag on. I love what you shared about how our experiences, our lived experiences, are often what pushes us into fighting for a better life, right? Because we know what life currently is. I think that's why I also entered into the work, is because I needed healing. I needed community. I needed these things. And so I guess when you need something, when you seek for something, then you find it. And I was able to find that with a lot of the people at Viet Lead, which I'm super grateful for my Viet Lead community. It's the first time that I have experienced a Vietnamese American group that that connects with me in my cultural and ethnic identity, but also people who are so intentional about crafting a freer future for all of us. And I think that's something that I would love to highlight, is that a lot of us, we enter into this work because it's, because we need it. Because we need the healing and we need the freedom and the liberation, right? But I think our misconception a lot of times is that, for example, only like anti-deportation work, right? Only people who are at risk of deportation are affected by deportation. That's not true, right? We are all, as Adrienne Maree Brown says, like we're all connected. Everything is connected. So what happens to somebody else connects to me. I think the necessity is for us to realize and to recognize that we are impacted by the oppressions that exist in the world. And I think that a lot of us, it's harder to recognize, right? Especially maybe if we're, we can more easily turn off that sort of thinking, or turn off the news, or turn off those stories and live in sort of an illusion of our lives, an illusion of comfort. But yeah, I think that that's what the work is within ourselves, is to realize how we are all connected to each other and how we are impacted by it. So I'm grateful to have found this community for sure in my own seeking for healing.
Yeah, I can go next. I mean, I love what you said, Jamie, about looking for a place to heal, right? And I think for me, I feel like, I've spent most of my life trying to understand who I am and why I exist and how my worth is measured. Figuring out how to love myself and be enough as a queer person, as a Hmong woman, right? And I think that most of the time it was other people telling me and showing me what that looked like, right? And that means watching somebody go through divorce, right? And them showing you this is what happens when you divorce as a Hmong woman, right? Or talking about this is what happens when you don't get married, right? At 18, you're gonna be this old lady at 30, right? I'm the old lady at 30, you know what I mean? And I love my life, and I think it's taken me a really long time to get to this point of like, I love my life, I love where I'm at, right? Nobody gets to tell me, what my worth is, right? And who I am. Like, those are the things that I get to figure out for myself. And so it's taken me a really long time. And I mean, the question, like, what made you decide to come into this work? I was going to say, like, at first I thought it was serendipity, and then the ancestors manifested or whatever. But I think actually the real question is what's keeping me in this work, right? And I think it's because I grew up in a community with a lot of violence, right? Interpersonal violence, gangs, like people who are actually trying to look for community and survive in poverty, right? And in my own neighborhood, in my own home, there was a lot of violence. And so I think I was gonna be doing this work regardless, right? Because I mean, gender-based violence and all this violence was just around me, and so I've seen it all. And I think what's keeping me in this work is that I want to believe that a different world is possible, right? And this goes back to what you shared, Jamie, is that our personal lived experiences bring us to this place, right? And that the closer we are to for lack of a better word, the closer we are to the fire, right? The more desire we have to find different solutions for our community, and to create a different world for those that are coming behind us, right? And so for me, I'm really big on working with young folks. I love my nieces and nephews. Like, I want a better world for them. They don't have to, they don't have to live the way we did. And so that's where I'm at. Just really wanting to be a part of creating a different world.
Yeah, thank you, Say. I think, all of us, all of you guys and all of us are, wanted to have a world where all of us can be who we are, right? Authentically, without being judged, without having to worry about being old and not being married, right? I think that's often a pressure that's put on women and girls everywhere, right? Like, if you're past a certain age, you're no longer like an eligible bachelor. You're too old, or whatever. And so I'm so glad that that you found yourself in that way, where you don't have where you are just you and regardless of everything that everyone is saying, that you live your authentic self and you found your own happiness that way, right? I think that's important for all of us.
Yeah, and like nobody has to wait until they're like in their 30s to find themselves, right? Like you should be able to do that at a younger age. And so
Yeah,
I
but
don't
we weren't taught to do that. You know, we're told to like be ready. You know, to be a wife,
yeah.
like whatever. We weren't taught to like love ourselves and find ourselves and be who we authentically want to be. That wasn't part of the conversation. Wasn't part of how we were taught to grow up. So
Right. Yeah, yeah, I agree. You know, and I think that's part of the work, right? Is how do we create space that's safe enough for young women, young girls to explore and figure out who they are, right? You
mhm.
know, versus like, you know, boys. Like it's obviously it's the way we're all conditioned because of this social construct of gender. But I'm just thinking like my brothers and I had a totally different life, you know, and so I think that people who are girls or people who don't identify as this like cis het, you know, hetero male prescription can explore themselves, right, and figure out who they are at a younger age. They don't have to wait until they're like in their 30s to do it.
Absolutely. So Tammy, I want to hear from you too. You know, what made you got into this work? I know you shared earlier that you are a product of Hawa, right? Um,
Yeah, no, thank you, Pa. And thank you, everyone, for really sharing. I think I really want to speak directly to all those that work with young people, right? Because Howard raised me as a young person, and I know that doing youth work in this, it can be really, really challenging, right? But I really hope that folks are inspired by my story and what it actually looks like to invest in young people for the long run, right? Because, I mean, people were investing in me without me even knowing that people were investing in me, you know, and that's why I feel like, you know, the women that founded the organization back, you know, 25 years ago, wanted a safe space for, you know, Hmong women and girls in Milwaukee. And I'm just so privileged to have it come back full circle and for me to serve in this capacity and for me to continue to provide that safe space, not only for like, you know, Hmong women and girls, but, you know, expanding that to include other Southeast Asian women, girls, and queer femme and queer and trans people in Milwaukee, right? And so I think, you know, I really resonate with what Say was talking about in terms of like what really makes you stay, right? And I completely agree with her. Like, what makes me stay is like, I really believe in building a better world, you know, a better world that is safer for everyone to be able to be who they are authentically, you know, and to live the life that they want to live and, you know, be true to who they are, right? And so that is really what makes me want to continue to stay because, you know, we live in communities where, you know, there is a lot of violence, right? But who better to, you know, be in the work, helping our people because of the love that we have for our communities, right, than us. And so that's really what has inspired me to continue to stay in the work. And so you know, I'm a product of a lot of sheroes that have poured into me, even when I didn't know that, you know, I was being poured into, right?
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you know, with you, and that we need to really invest in our youth, right? And like you were saying, Tammy, you're a proud of Hawa, and so we want to do that for all, you know, young girls everywhere to be able to cultivate emerging leaders who's going to come back and really lead us into the future, right? So yeah, that takes me to my next question. I know all of you are from amazing agencies doing work on the ground every day, you know, working with clients, doing all sorts of amazing things even through the pandemic. So I want to hear from you. I want you to really brag and share some innovative things that women and women-led agencies have been doing during this time to meet some of those needs that may not be met during the pandemic. And anyone can start.
Yeah, I can go ahead and get started with this. During this time of the pandemic, I know that it's been really hard for people, but and for all of us, really, and for many of us, we've also, had to experience a lot of loss. But I think, when there's just so much chaos happening in the world, the beautiful thing that really came to fruition is that as women, we didn't wait. Right? We didn't wait for solutions to come, because we were like, we have our own solutions, right? And so I always talk about the resiliency of women in responding to really difficult circumstances, right? And I can say that as like an organization and even as a team, everybody was really, really hands on deck. And like when I say that when I say that we really like transformed our organization, we really did that, right? Because there was just so much need. We were, as Hawa, we like became many, many, many things, right? We became like a shipping and packaging place. People were like, I'm like an expert now at like boxing up care packages for like over 500 women and girls that we sent care packages to, and printing out labels and understanding all of that. We became a pantry for our community when, folks were looking for rice. And so we became a rice pantry for our people, right? At the same time, it's like, there was a lot of misinformation. And so we really became like an information hub of like, okay, this is what we're hearing. This is what we're knowing to be like factual information, to really cancel out all of the crazy, political noise that was making things so complicated at that time. And then, we continue to stay open. And we work through, when we really think about folks who really put their lives on the line to help community. I really have to give it hats off to all the advocates that continue to meet with, our survivors, and making sure that they were feeling supported and getting everything that they needed to have, and then we really also were making sure that people knew that we were still here, right? And on top of that, like our civic engagement team was still trying to push out the vote and push out civic education. And so we never stopped. And I know a lot of us on the panel, in terms of our organizations, we never stopped, right? And we never looked at this pandemic as like, okay, this is not going to be something that stops us, right? But, how are we going to overcome, right? And how are we continue to create virtual safe spaces for our, young people to continue to gather and check in and make sure that they're okay, right? And so we got to be really creative as well, and some of us picked up a lot of new skills that are helping us move our people and move our community and do this work. And so, those are like a lot of the things that we became. And I think reflecting back, I know folks are always saying, okay, it's been a whole year, and reflecting back on this year of challenges, like, I think one of the things that we have always known to be true, and that we continue to prove time and time again, is like, as women, as queer femme folks leading this work, like, we have the solutions, and we're not waiting for anybody, right, to come save us, because, we really truly believe that we have the solutions, right? And so we, we're able to continue to keep our people safe as we could, and keep them fed, and give them the resources that they need.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy, for just sharing all the incredible things that Hawa is doing. I'm always amazed by the new innovative things that are happening. Especially with trying to like just be there for people during this crazy time in our lives, right? And still trying to like do all the grant stuff that you have to do and do all the outreach that you have to do and still do all of that in a way that stays true to your mission, but also meeting the needs of the current need of your community. So, you know, hooray for Hawa and all the incredible work that you and your team are doing. What about other folks on here? Say, can you share with us what Transforming Generation has been doing? And a little bit about Transforming Generation as well, since it is a fairly new org to the movement work.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about Transforming Generations. What our mission and our vision is to address gender-based violence, right? But in our work with our community, what we've learned or what we're learning is that there's other pieces to our other types of violence that our community is experiencing. And so, namely Southeast Asian deportation, right? Anti-Asian violence, those kind of things. And so we've kind of expanded a lot of our work to do other pieces too, because we know that all of this intersects with gender-based violence, right? And so my role specifically is to work on our queer justice programming. We are a queer femme, queer justice organization. That's what we center a lot of our work around. And so one thing that we were able to start up was our drop-in support group, right? And so we saw that there was a need and that people were feeling really isolated and we weren't quite sure how to do it, just, recognizing that some folks might not be out. And so that might not be easy for them to do at home. And so we have these two wonderful volunteers who are very knowledgeable, very intelligent, have been doing a lot of the queer work. And so they've kind of been facilitating this space. And so it's been going really well. We're continuing to serve, in our advocacy program. We're sending out care packages. And so we did create a deportation workbook with a couple of other care package items. We sent those out. We sent out care packages for our queer and trans folks that we work with. And so we're just trying to get things out to folks and still recognizing sometimes they don't want their family members to know that they're working with us. And so just trying to be sensitive to all those things. I will say the one thing, that I've been seeing aside from like the work we're doing, and Tammy, exactly what you said is just how fast our women work, right? And just to see the amount of creativity that's been going around, right? I don't know if y'all watch live, but all these women selling, right? And creating and doing these things. And even the folks that we work with are doing similar things, right? They're finding ways to make it work. And they're having, they're cooking meals and sharing that. Like, it's amazing to just see how we're all thriving and being so resilient in this moment, right? Not to say like we're doing the best, but just to see how we move, and to see how the mutual aids come up. And so that's been really exciting. And we're continuing to expand and to hire folks to come and do this work because we know that is essential. And, COVID, I think, has changed the way we work. And even around deportation, right? It's definitely changed the way we do our work. And so we're continuing to be, innovative and open to the changes and trying to meet our community needs and even building stronger coalitions with people. And so that's what we're doing at Transforming Generations.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Say. I'm always amazed to see the great things that are happening from our sister state. So thank you for sharing that. Jamie Claire, what about you? We don't know much about Vet Lee. Can you share a little bit about Vet Lee with us and some of the things that you're doing during this time to provide service to your community?
I would love to share about Viet Lead. I also am really grateful to hear about all the different orgs tonight. It seems like we do very similar work, and it's really cool to see, similar work, but all across the U.S. So at Viet Lead, there's a lot of themes that you've already mentioned, right? It's a women and queer femme-led organization, and we we're incredible. I'm just going to say that, especially some of the health team members who have been working so hard to be resilient and adapting and creative in light of the COVID season, right? So we're still working to address violence and meet people's needs, because COVID didn't end violence. It didn't stop violence. It just shifted where it occurred sometimes, right? So our team has worked really hard to connect people who had COVID with groceries and food deliveries. They're working really hard now to raise awareness and connect Southeast Asian folks to get on vaccine lists. And I do also want to shout out to our youth, just like it was mentioned earlier. Our youth are so important in this work. It's not so much that we're doing these things for our youth, right? But I feel like as a youth coordinator, I'm working with my youth, alongside my youth, and learning and growing from them so often. Our youth have, done this whole year virtually, and just to see the way that they have been so creative and adaptive to continue to fight for their needs, even in this really tough season. So they're still campaigning for educational justice. They're still fighting for anti-deportation. Even just today, they were hosting a phone zap for some anti-deportation work. So I'm really grateful to be surrounded by such good leaders and good workers. And I think one thing I want to say about our youth is that it's really important, as I've learned this year, to listen to our youth and to recognize that our youth are not our future, but they are our present. If we listen to them now, if we hear what their needs are, and if we hear their solutions, then we've already got it. They figured it out, and we just need to be receptive and allow them to live free from the traumas that was passed down to us. So I'm really grateful to be surrounded by that work. And I also want to use this opportunity as a shout out and a call to action to everybody else who maybe is not women and who is not gender oppressed. Like, yes, women are working really hard. Resilient, strength, these are all themes, right? But they shouldn't be the only ones up carrying this labor. And I think it's also important to recognize that the challenges of COVID have also made it, have added labor onto our women. It's tiring. It's strenuous to have to carry and adapt and continue to struggle for this, for liberation and for healing. And we shouldn't have to be the only ones doing it. So if you're wondering if it's your place to be part of this work, the answer is yes.
Thank you so much, Jimmy Claire, for sharing with us what VETLI does and the work that you're doing with youth and with your community. And that leads me right to Sam. Can you share with us what are some of the things that you're doing with your Khmer community, and a little bit about what your program does?
Yeah, definitely. I want to echo what everybody is saying, is that women, when we don't sleep, like we're always ready, for anything. And that's what makes us who we are. And we're like these problem solvers, right? But you're right. Women and young folks and youth shouldn't be the one who are carrying that weight alone. With that, I know a lot of folks may know what Freedom Inc. is, but for those who don't, we are an organization that serves the Khmer, Hmong, Black, queer community. And we mainly serve low-income folks. We provide direct services. I mean, it's like anything, right? We'll check up on our elders. We go and knock on doors and canvassing. So shout out to CPB team. And then we also have our YJT team. It's our youth justice team, who is always out on the front line, fighting to make those changes for not just them, but the youth that will come after them. And so during this time of the pandemic, it's not something that we don't know that we, struggle with. I mean, we struggled with it before, right? So this pandemic that's going on, it's just like another layer. So with that, we can't leave our community behind because those are the most impacted, but we are also the most forgotten, right? So we continue to provide virtual programming. It's important that we stay close with our members and clients, so that we can talk out with what's happening in our community, in the state, in the country. We provide food pantry. We're also dropping off care packages and essential needs. A lot of the things that we do is because we know that our folks, our community needs it. And if no one does it, who would be the best but us, right? So we're always there when people need us. Even until midnight, we're at the hospital. So our work just doesn't stop because the world shuts down because of the pandemic. We continue to provide those services. We are also, right now, we're actually working on a housing campaign. So, that's one thing that we're seeing is that we know that we can't always help with emergency fundings for housing, right? We actually have to fight the system and change the policies in order for people to live better. I mean, housing is something that everybody deserves, right? You can't feed someone who is homeless because they're still cold. So everything that we do work hand in hand together, and we'll continue to share that, on our Facebook too. But yes, definitely, we stay with our community. We want them to know that we are still here regardless, and we will be there no matter what.
Thank you, Sambo, and thank you to all the panelists for sharing and really, sharing all the incredible things all of you are doing. And you're absolutely right that, it shouldn't be women and girls and queer and trans folks that are carrying the weight of the work that we're doing, but it's oftentimes the reality, right? Even if you want to, not do all that work, it ends up being the work that we do. And so I just continue to be humbled by all of the incredible work that agencies like HAWA and Vet Lead and FI and Transforming Generation continues to do for our community pre-COVID, during COVID, and even after COVID, the things that you've been doing. So that leads me to my next question. And I'll like Jimmy Claire to start. And I want to ask, what does gender justice mean to you in the work that you're doing?
I think this is something that we've all touched on earlier, is gender justice, justice in general, is the ability to just be ourselves freely and joyfully and being affirmed in who we are. I think that with gender injustice, gender is not the problem, right? What the problem is I guess how our gender is perceived or how people react to our gender. And at the root of that is fear. At the root of that is insecurity and desire for control. So gender justice is allowing ourselves to have gender, whatever gender we are and whatever gender we choose to be, and to celebrate in that and to have fun with that, to express ourselves because that brings our heart joy and that brings other people joy and that feels true to ourselves, to describe ourselves and to name ourselves and group ourselves with people that we connect to. It should be about connection. It should be about finding, similarities with other people because we are so connected. And that's what gender justice would mean for me. I just hope that, I think that's what I want to see for our youth is I don't want them to not be who they are. I just want them to stop being afraid to be who they are. Yeah.
What about the other panelists? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I've touched base on this, and other panelists have said it too, that for women, children, and queer folks to be able to like speak, dress, and express themselves without like the fear of harm or violence. And when I think about that too, I think about like how our culture and religion plays a big role, and that the harm that violence that are being caused is that we use our culture and religion as an excuse, right? When we've seen this many times, and we know that culture changes, religion changes, our practices, they change. So it's time that we actually, change those type of practices to protect our youth and our women and children and our queer folks. So there is no, we can't do that kind of stuff because it's in our culture. We can't say that kind of stuff or act this way because it's our religion. It's time that we make those changes now.
I really resonate with that. I went to a funeral recently, and this man came up and started talking, addressing the kids. And he said, be glad your mom remarried this man who isn't Hmong, right? Because if she didn't marry this man, her ex-husband's clan, they weren't going to bury her, and her own clan wasn't going to bury her, right? Because when you're Hmong and you marry, you're a woman, you marry out of your clan. And so I think, to hear that, and then to hear another man come up afterwards to say, to address the kids, to say, if I'm going to talk about your mom, I must first talk to you about who your dad was, right? And to me, I was so floored, right? And I think gender justice to me means that when somebody dies, celebrate them, right? Don't be talking about the fact that they were divorced, or who they were married to, or how to, who to talk about first before we can talk about the woman. Like, celebrate her life, and that to me is gender justice. And I think, with COVID, we saw that funeral rites, funeral things could be changed, right? And so I'm like, okay, if we could accommodate, right, with COVID, how come we can't accommodate all these other things, And so that was hard for me to be in that space today, and just and just be like, wow, I can't believe it. Like, it wasn't that I was surprised or like that it was unexpected, but like, just to be in this day and age and still have to hear that, right, was hard. And I was, the last thing I'll say too, is that I actually believe deeply that queer and trans people are going to save the world, and I say this because, you know, because of who we are and because of how we show up in the world, it allows people to see a different way, right? Of expressing your gender, of being safe. And I think when queer and trans people are authentically themselves and they can express who they are and express a different way of being, right? It really actually opens up a lot of space for cisgender folks, for straight folks, right, to be a different way. And so my belief is that we're going to save the world. And as Jean and Gajua always say, right, from Freedom Inc., that there is no gender justice without queer justice. And so I really truly believe that when the most impacted folks get to do the work and they get to be themselves, they really do open up space for other folks, right? And so if we could figure out all these funeral rights for queer and trans folks, we're about to be able to figure out for cisgender straight women who are divorced, right? We're about to figure out, for all these other folks. And so I really, deeply believe that queer and trans folks are going to save the world, and we're going to show folks how to actually do gender justice work that is inclusive, and that just is inclusive, includes everyone. And we can, if we could figure that out, then I think we could figure out how to do gender justice. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yes. Yes, I truly, truly believe too that queer and trans people will save all of us. I truly believe that too. And so I just really, really resonated with that because, I know that, my liberation is also connected to the liberation of my queer and trans brothers and sisters. And so, yeah, it's just so, so true. And I think that, I totally agree with what everybody had said. And I think the only thing that I really want to add is, Sam, when you're talking about like culture and religion, and like just having just so many expectations of who we're supposed to be based on, our gender is just what's causing so much harm, right? And so like what Jamie was talking about, like how, can we just be freely and authentically who we are without, without the expectations of what gender role we're supposed to play, right? And so I think that's why we're all of us on this panel are trying to create a better and a different world, right? So that we don't have to be confined to what the world tells us that we should be, right? So thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's everything that you said, it just, true and incredible. So thank you so much for sharing that. We are almost at closing time. And so I want each of you to just take a few minutes and, give some closing remarks. What advice do you have for Southeast Asian women, girls, and young people? Sambo, do you want to go first?
I thought about this, and it's hard for me sometimes, to give advices, right? Because I'm always asking people like, what's the advice that you give me? Because I want to always do better. And to me, when I thought about this, I thought about like the young me, the me who was always silent because I was so afraid to speak out, because I was so afraid of community shaming me. So for me, it would be that, that your voice is as strong as 100 of us. And when you speak, it opens path to healing and ending gender-based violence.
I think I love what you said about, encouraging people to speak, to use your voice. And I want to say to folks who are listening that you speak not just, yes, to end gender-based violence, to resist, to fight, but that's not all who you are. Our gender, who we are based on our gender, is not only defined by our struggle. We are not just our struggle. We are not just our fight, and we are not just the harms that are perpetrated against us. We are also beautiful. We are also something worth celebrating, And so when we use our voice, it's not just to push against, but it's to be, it's to exist. And we deserve to exist, particularly gender oppressed folks, queer and trans folks. I think I want Southeast Asian, queer, trans women, girls, non-binary folks to know that like there is joy, there is celebration, and maybe you're not in a space where people are celebrating you, but that doesn't mean that space doesn't exist. Look at here, right here. It exists right here. And so I think I want people to hold on to the hope that that space exists, and that if you can find us, if you can find that space is there with open arms ready for you. You aren't alone. You aren't just a reason for a fight or a struggle. You are beautiful and worthy of celebration.
Yeah, I really resonated, I think, with what both of you shared, and just reflecting on myself as a younger person, right? As you said, Sambo, and I think what I'm about to say, I think they're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna listen to her," but I was a weird kid, okay? Like, I was a weird kid. I grew up with six brothers, and so I spent a lot of time with my brothers. And for the longest time, wasn't the most feminine, presenting person. And I wanted to wear Jinko jeans. That was the thing back then. And like I wanted to wear bell bottoms, but it was like too rebellious. So then I like cut up my own pants and sewed the triangle, and then I got the bell bottom. I was a weird child, and I played soccer. And I think for me, right, the advice is don't be afraid to be different. I tried to conform, right? I mean, my family, so we grew up poor, and it was hard for me to relate to people at school, right? Because they were like, I don't know, middle class people, and I couldn't relate. And it took me a long time to understand that, and to be like, wow, this is why I thought I was a weird child for so long. You know what I mean? And so my advice to you is don't be afraid to be different, right? Like when you are authentically yourself, no matter how different it is, you open up space for other people to also be themselves, right? And that's how you find community, right? Is if you be your weird self. Some other weird person that is just as weird as you is gonna know this is where I go for community, right? And that you're not alone, and that as a young person, I mean, being different, I think it's hard because of the peer pressure. But let me tell you, once you hit college, it's a whole different story. You are, everybody, like you just have the energy that people look for, and they want to be around folks who are authentic, who are real. And yeah, that's my advice: is don't be afraid to be different, be yourself, be authentic, and the right people will come in.
Yes, Say. I feel like you are also speaking directly to me because I'm like, yes, yes, all of what you just said. And I think the one thing that I always remember, and it's a Shiro series, so Gajo always says that when you know better, you should do better, and so I always try to live by that, and I always feel that if people continue, and if all of us continue to know better, then we should be doing better, and in that doing better, that we're creating a better and safer world for all of us.
Thank you all so much for, just really putting your heart out there, and giving some incredible advice to, to young people, to women, girls that are watching us today. We barely touched the surface of the work that all of you do, right? I think we need like another, longer than an hour and a half to have this conversation, honestly, because we really get there. And so I'm, just want to encourage the audience that if you want to learn more about the work that each of the orgs doing, please go and like their Facebook page, go on their website. If you live in their city, sign up to volunteer with them. If you're a student, look to them to have your internship at. That's how you can engage and that kind of thing. But again, take time to learn about the work that all of the agencies are here are doing. And like I said, we barely scratched the surface. I'm really sad to bring us to a closing, because I feel like we continue to have this conversation and continue to, share all the incredible work that all of you are doing within your own community, but also, some of the analysis behind what gender-based violence is, right? And why we'll continue to do this work. So I, again, apologize that we don't have enough time to do that. I just want to remind folks about t-shirts. You can go on the website, the link will be dropped, and order t-shirts from any of the Shiros that has been presented so far last week and this week. And proceeds from from the t-shirts goes back directly to the agency that the Sheroes is from. So if you want to support Hawa, please go and buy a Tammy t-shirt. If you want to support Vet Lee, please go and buy a t-shirt with Jimmy Cree on it, right? So please go and do that. I want to remind folks also that we will be coming back on next Friday at 7 o'clock, same time, to continue our Sheroes series. So stay tuned to the incredible Hmong and Southeast Asian women that will be showcasing over this month to really celebrate Hmong Women's History Month and International Women's Month. Okay. With that being said, thank you for joining us tonight. Please, again, like the pages from the orgs that presented today, and we'll see you back again next week.
Thank you so much for having us. It was so great to meet all of you and to hear
Yes.
about your work.
Thank you. And I'm humble and honored to share the space with all of you.
Me too.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody for joining us. Don't forget, next week, there's another set of panelists of Sheroes.
I'll be there for sure.
Я想听领出的，比如讲好，Wisconsin Hmong Family Saving Helpline，保庇都是动了，比如说动我想到的好多被下 blow sun blow all cure all，一個都只幾次做，了麼只幾有聲，人錯聲，了程度好多被比馬林這個他，這幾我有聲聽錯聲的。特可能古啥個你學的這個還得比圖啥動上的特好多，只要一下 blow sun blow all cure all 我聽到。也想聽